Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Brian, we talked a little bit about this Virginia Tech game from last week. Let's talk about Pitt coming up this week. A big game. Both Pitt and Clemson still need some help in the ACC. Need Miami to drop a game. Maybe SMU drops a game, and then you could find a three-way tie there if you're Clemson. There are some possibilities for the Tigers to get back to Charlotte. There's some possibilities for Pitt, though that's a little tougher of a road, I think, considering what their schedule looks like down the stretch. But there's definitely a lot to play for between Pitt and Clemson. Pitt licking their wounds after taking two straight losses. I thought Pitt was maybe playing with a little bit of not to upset the Pitt fans that'll watch, but they were maybe playing above their heads a little bit for a while, and some of their issues have kind of shown through. But still a dangerous opponent that has a lot of wins, and certainly not going to be an easy game, you would think. But we'll see. If Clemson kind of gets rolling and both teams play their best, I do think Clemson probably finds a way to come out on top. But just big picture thoughts. I mean, the winner of this game is, in my estimation, like the way I've looked at it, is probably going to get third place in the ACC at worst, right? And then if somebody ahead of them stumbles, which we've seen happen a lot in this college football season, not just in conference, could find themselves in Charlotte. And so, you hate to be playing a bronze medal match, but at worst, this is a bronze medal match. At best, this could be for a chance at going to Charlotte.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Clemson and Pitt play 12 o'clock this coming Saturday. Clemson's a 10-point favorite right now. So they were a 9.5-point favorite. Right now, I like to look at my opponent. I like to look at their schedule. And I mean, I know this is the ABCs of football, but with fans, we get away from the ABCs of football. Let's talk about who Pitt's played. They played Kent State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Youngstown State, North Carolina, California. They barely beat California. They had that big win against Syracuse, but who throws 3 pick sixes in the game? In a game, and that's what Kyle McCord did. And then the very next week they come out, they play at SMU. SMU beats them by 23 points, and then the head scratcher over the weekend, they lose by 5 points to the artist formerly known as the Virginia Cavaliers. The point is, I never bought into Pitt. Pitt is one of those teams that they had an easy schedule. And they won, and you can't blame them for their schedule to a point. They can't help that some of the teams fell off like they fell off. But I was never impressed with them. I don't think the vast majority of the media was impressed with them, and I don't think that any real semi-conscious, logical college football fan ever really took Pitt serious. So coming into this game, on their side, I look at them and I go, they're not a bad football team, but they're not a great football team. There's other 2-loss football teams out there that you're like, holy crap, they could win the national championship or make a run in the college football playoff. This is not one of those teams. What works in their favor, unfortunately for me, is that Clemson's bipolar. And this past game against Virginia Tech really summarized this season very well for me. First half, Clemson comes out. There's just no continuity. There's a lack of intensity. Seems like they can't get it together. Have a blocked field goal, return for a touchdown, 5th blocked field goal of the season. And then the second half, Clemson comes out. They do what they can do, and they dominate. They win the ball game. Really, the question for me is which Clemson team shows up at Pittsburgh. And that really goes back to the sidelines, the coaches, especially on the offensive side of the football. Guys, you have to stop going back into your shell. You have to stop giving us the excuse of, they're playing 2 high safeties. I know high school coaches who could scheme for that. So, Clemson needs to come out hitting on all cylinders, and they need to keep in the forefront what you're talking about. Guys, Miami stumbled over the weekend. SMU has an easy schedule from this point out, but who says they can't lose? They can't stumble. So Clemson needs to keep their eyes on each game individually, but in the back of their mind, we still have a lot to play for, even if it's kind of a lie.
Yeah, when I look at Pitt, I think of their quarterback issues have certainly been apparent. Eli Holstein has been okay. But I know there's a lot of frustration with just the play down the stretch when they've played a little bit better opponents. And I don't even know, no shots at Virginia. I don't really know if that's a super quality opponent. But I do know that in that SMU game, that was a big deal. Eli's not been great, in a lot of the ACC games they've played. And it does feel, you have to go out and play. And if you let a team stick around or you have massive mistakes, whether they be penalties or turnovers or blocked kicks or whatever, you can leave a team in it. But it does feel like an opportunity where Clemson could really, I don't know how much of a statement this game would be. Like, I'm not trying to overhype the game, but it is an opportunity for you to go out and kind of, rebuild some confidence, and I think they did that somewhat against Virginia Tech. But I do think it's an opportunity to go out and kind of continue to rebuild that confidence. And like you said, you've got a chance to maybe play your way back into some pretty big things. I know you've had some questions on if going to some big games later is worth it or not. But I mean, shoot, you play your way back into it and you find your way back into Charlotte, and that is a big deal. But again, with their quarterback situation, I do think that is an opportunity for Clemson to kind of take advantage. I also think that, you think about Pitt and you think about them being incredibly physical. They're always going to be under their staff. I think that, they do a pretty good job there of always kind of being up for games. I think the talent gap is something that's probably a little bit too wide here. And Clemson's a physical team, right? Like I kind of thought like Pitt against SMU, a little more finesse, a little more, physicality. Maybe Pitt could kind of push their way to a win. Clemson's probably not going to get pushed around in this game. And so it all kind of lines up to me as Clemson having a pretty good opportunity here to come out with a win. And, we talked about this with Virginia Tech. Playing at home is a pretty big deal as well.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Wes Goodwin, who took a lot of heat for last week. Clemson has some depth issues across the defensive line. Clemson's defensive line and linebackers historically are pretty doggone good. If you look at it. But Wes switched up the defense. He switched up the defense based on his personnel or lack thereof due to injury and so on. And we saw what it did to Virginia Tech. And I want to send a shout out to that guy who caught crap all week. All the while, for the past 3 seasons, the offense has been anemic. And yeah, people's called for certain people's head here and there. But it was really once the defense, the diamond, the jewel of Clemson football that's kept us in football games that we probably should have lost had the defense not been so good. Once that started going down, Clemson fans really started to panic because they know the truth. They even in those moments of drunk fandom, they lie to themselves and go, well, we're a good team. Oh no, the defense is going down. Oh crap, we're really in trouble. Wes went in and made an adjustment, and he stuck to it, and that makes me feel better about him. That makes me feel better about our chances as the season goes on. Now, with that said, what do we see on the offensive side of the football? We just saw a game at Virginia Tech where it looked like 2 different coaching staffs for the offense called the first and the second half. And that happened just 2 days ago. So who's going to show up in Pitt to coach for our offense? Who knows? But here's what I do know. Pittsburgh's not as tough as Virginia Tech. Pittsburgh is not as tough as Louisville. And they're definitely not as tough as Georgia. And I don't think they're even close to the South Carolina Gamecocks. Here's my point. You have this game, then you have the Citadel. And that's going to be a chill game in Death Valley. Clemson will win that hands down. But the very next week, you're going to have to play the South Carolina Gamecocks. And as much as I can't stand the feathered foe of Columbia, those guys are playing some really good football right now. They're hyped up. They feel good. Shane Beamer has it going on right now. And Clemson needs to get their crap together in this game and in the next game before they have to play South Carolina, because the very last thing you want is for you to be denied a 10-win regular season win total, and it be by the Gamecocks. So this is a great game for the offense to go ahead, especially on the coaching side, to get their crap together and stop playing around and get going, because we have some tougher games ahead of us.
Yeah. Talk about Pitt. Their defense has certainly had its ups and downs. But again, when you think about physicality, when you think about their program, does their Does that side of the ball worry you a little bit? I know you've talked a lot from the Clemson side. Can they get their stuff together? But the other team lines up too, right? And so, like, what
Yeah.
about Pitt on that side of the ball? Kind of gives you some pause or some concern with a Clemson offense that has been pretty up and down.
To me, I'm not really worried about Pittsburgh's defense. To me, this is a game where Clemson, whoever stares back at you in the mirror for the Clemson Tigers, whether it's coaching or the players, coaching or the players, that's who you need to beat. I mean, I've watched Pitt play some this season, and transparently, I was not impressed. Again, I was not beating the drum of Pittsburgh is a good football team. I look at Clemson. This is Clemson's game to lose. This is not Pitt's game to win. This is Clemson's game to lose, and they have to go in. They have to execute because Pittsburgh, they're not a bad football team. Narduzzi, I mean, my Lord, I mean, it's boring football. It really is boring football. Fortunately, he's not having to defend, some great historical team. And what I mean by defend is go in and coach at such a high level to protect the reputation of, say, an Ohio State or a Georgia or an Alabama. I mean, that's tough. Pittsburgh, you have to go, what, back in the 80s, late 70s, to really get to that point where they were just crazy good. I know they had Kenny Pickett a few years ago, and everybody wants to point to that, but I'm talking about really good football teams. I mean, it's boring football. He can coast for as long as he wants to. This comes down to Clemson, a team that just 6 years ago won a national championship. This comes down to them dominating the game, and I lay that squarely on the shoulders of the coaching staff. Get these players coached up, get them fired up, and then call plays that screams, we want to beat you and beat you bad. We're not going to give you a chance. So for me, I'm not worried about Pittsburgh. I'm more worried about the sidelines at Clemson.
It is early. We're recording this on a Monday morning, and so we've got several days until the game. Obviously, things can move around and change, but if you've got to predict it now, we'll hold your feet to the fire a little bit. What's your prediction for this one?
I think Clemson comes out and wins this ball game. I do. I could see it being a little ugly, messy. Not because Pitt's so good. It's because, I'm telling you, Clemson fans, you can get ticked off at me. That's totally fine. I will just play back every game we lost this season and some of the games that we farted around in. So I'll be happy to run that footage for you and remind you of what you are so conveniently forgetting. This team, they're just inconsistent, and I lay it back on the shoulders of the coaches. I can't go out there and run a play that the coach didn't call. I can drop an assignment. I can not pay attention in the secondary and have busted coverage. Yeah, I can run the wrong route. We're talking about coaching malfeasance at times. And just 9 days ago, Clemson had some of the worst coaching malfeasance I've seen in a long time. It was in Death Valley at night. That was 9 days ago, guys. So Clemson's offense, I'm getting worked up. Clemson's coach's staff has got to pull it together. I think it's going to be another bipolar game. Clemson wins this ball game 7 to 10 points.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. I think they win, probably going away. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up running away with it. If they put a game together and play really well, I could see them winning by 14, 17 or more. I think Pitt's got to really count on a lot of Clemson mistakes, which they've shown that they can do. But then Pitt probably needs to play a really good game as well. And I think that Pitt is reeling. Now, I will say there's a theory in college football of, you don't typically have 3 great games in a row, and you don't typically have 3 terrible games in a row. And so maybe that plays into Pitt's favor. Maybe they're just not as good as we thought they were at 7-0. I'm leaning more toward that side. But I think Pitt will put everything they can on the line in this game. I actually kind of expect them to play a little bit better, at least for a half, and maybe keep it close, kind of like the Virginia Tech game was at half. And then I think Clemson ends up kind of salting it away. So we'll see. It is early in the week, and we'll certainly talk about it next week as well.
I'll throw this out there. God forbid we line up for a field goal. I mean, if this starts,
just get touchdowns. It's easier.
Yeah. I'm seeing us line up, and I feel bad for a kicker because he's like, y'all, I'm hitting kicks when you block for me. So, I mean, if this comes down to a field goal game, man, it would be whacked out. But I mean, I just see Clemson. Clemson has to pull this together. I don't know what their problem is. It's not a talent issue. It's not a brand issue. This just goes back to coaching. So I agree with you. Clemson, if they came in hitting on all cylinders and stopped doing what they've been doing here and there, I mean, yeah, they could win this ball game by 3 touchdowns. I'm just not convinced of it. Show me. I'm like Missouri. I'm the show me state. Just do it.
The show me state now resides in Clemson, South Carolina. So, Brian, where can people follow you? Where can they find your show?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Clemson Football Live. Drop a line. Let me know that you saw me on this channel. It's always good to hear from everybody, and thanks for having me on, man.
I appreciate you, buddy. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks.